They say a green light means go. It's the universal sign for progress, for movement, or even for safety. But on a humid night in November of 2020, it was far from it. For on this evening, a woman would choose a path. This path would lead her from her home into a busy interstate before exiting into a dimly lit neighborhood. But little did she know, someone had been watching, someone was waiting, and that someone had already decided that her time was up. While she was driving through the neighborhood, she would encounter a red light, and for a moment, things were normal. The cool breeze of the autumn night, the vibrations and sounds coming from a car that is sitting idle seemed to be soothing. But without warning, that stillness would be shattered by muzzle flashes and then tires screeching off into the dark. This is the story of Ebony Pack. September 26, 1990. The world would make way for Ebony Pack. She would be born to her mother, Rhonda Pack, and her father, Arthur Long. She was a mother's second-born child, and she would have her upbringing in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Growing up, she would go through a lot of changes. She would be raised in various neighborhoods, but one thing in her life that was constant was a church upbringing. She was even involved in church activities, granted her gift. She would sing in the choir. Ebony is described as an upbeat person, someone who had a smile that was contagious, and a laughter that could brighten your day. In the year of 2009, Ebony would graduate from Frankfort High School, and upon completion, the next step in her life came as no surprise. For even at a younger age, she's someone who enjoyed helping others, someone who had an extremely big heart. So when Ebony stood up and said that she was going into the medical field, no one batted an eye. It was something that seemed natural for someone so giving. After graduating high school, her family would make a transition to Feasterville. Feasterville is a small place located in Bucks County. The family had moved to this place in search of more space. It was also a convenient location, seeing that her college was only 5 to 7 miles from Feasterville itself. She would attend Holy Family University. She was on her route to becoming a nurse. But then, a fork would be thrown in the road. She would have an unexpected pregnancy in her freshman year. In light of this change, she would be forced to drop out. 9 months later, she would welcome a daughter. Upon birth, she would become her entire existence, her entire world. And things with her baby father, they were okay. But then, like deja vu, another unexpected turn. The father of her child would be arrested and charged with murder. And just like that, Ebony Pack is now a single mother. Along this route, she would meet someone. A girl, someone who she was romantically interested in. Coming out to her family wasn't an easy task. She was, after all, raised in the church, and a lot of churches speak directly against it. But once she did, she would be welcomed with open arms. They would even get married, and with them both having children, they would form a blended family. By the year of 2020, after 5 years of being in a relationship, it would end. The honeymoon was over. So once again, Ebony would set out into the world as a single mother. Ebony was now 30 years old. She was effectively known as Eb or Ebby to those who loved her.
Enjoying my lunch on the rooftop today. I look good. I look blessed.
By then, she was described as unapologetic, someone who lived her life with no regrets. She was the kindest, most giving person, and with those attributes, she would soon, once again, attract another mate, a woman who goes by the name of Jasmine Stokes. They would meet in July of 2020, and soon after, they would make it official. This now brings us to November of 2020. November 28th of 2020 comes. Shortly after Thanksgiving, she would leave her home, on her way to Lansdale, Pennsylvania, to visit her girlfriend Jasmine. 40 minutes after Ebony left her home, her mother would receive a knock on her front door. And to her surprise, it was the police. At the time, not much information was given. They merely told the mother that Ebony was hurt and she was at a local hospital and she needed to get there fast. So Rhonda goes to the hospital, and when she gets there, she's stunned by the news. She learns that Ebony Pack was deceased. And what she thought to initially have been a car accident wasn't. A shooting occurred, and when the smoke cleared, it was Ebony Pack that was left in the forefront. On November 28th of 2020, shortly before 10 p.m., the Lansdale Police Department would respond to a call. This call would lead them to the intersection of East Hancock Street and Church Road, a small neighborhood. When they get there, the person who made the call testified that they were inside of their home. They heard a few shots, and when they came outside, they saw a vehicle. Upon inspecting that vehicle, they would find 30-year-old Ebony Pack inside, suffering from wounds. She would immediately be transported to the Abington Lansdale Hospital, but a few hours later, she would succumb to her injuries.
Well, this is the intersection where the crime occurred. Police say the victim was just sitting in her Nissan sedan when someone unloaded multiple bullets into her driver's side door. Officials are not releasing many details about the victim, aside from the fact that she lived in Bucks County.
You always hear these things, incidents happening, in those areas, outside Philly and in Philly itself, but not here.
The Montgomery County DA's office has officially launched a homicide investigation. Homeowners say they still can't believe it happened where it did.
And this is a quiet, older neighborhood around here. There's a school here, there's a school down there, there's two schools down there, So no, I cannot believe it. It was a little shocking, a little scary.
And a spokesperson for the Montgomery County DA's office clarified that this is not a public safety threat. Officials are still looking for a suspect, but they would not go into further details. An autopsy is scheduled for tomorrow. In Lansdale, Jacqueline Lee for Action News at 10 on PHL 17.
The initial investigation led to very little clues. They did, however, have one major clue. They saw a dark-colored Cadillac speed away from the scene. With little evidence, they would begin their interviews. They would start by interviewing family and friends. They would start with the obvious questions. Do you guys know anyone who would want to harm her? But no one did. They were also asked if they had knowledge of anyone who drove a dark Cadillac. But again, no one could think of anyone. They would, however, find out about Ebony Pack's wife, the one she was separated from. And with Ebony now dating a new woman, to a seasoned investigator, this sounds like motive. So her estranged ex is brought down to the interrogation room, but by the end of it, she denied having any knowledge. She says they were cordial. Everything was okay. For now, the ex-wife would be placed on the back burner. It was now time for a new interview, an interview with Ebony's new girlfriend, Jasmine Stokes. So, Jasmine goes down to headquarters to speak with the authorities. She is then questioned if she had something to do with it, but she says no. She loved Ebony. She did, however, offer another person of interest. Jasmine would explain that she had this deranged ex, a guy who, since she began dating Ebony, just wouldn't leave them alone. The guy in question was then 50-year-old Chong Ling Dan. Jasmine claimed that Chong was a guy who wouldn't move on. She made claims that he broke into her home. He would come up to her job to harass her. But on top of that, he was following her around town. She would even make an alarming statement. She says that one day, Chong told her that he's going to fix her girlfriend. She was then asked if Chong drove a dark-colored Cadillac, but he didn't. But nonetheless, he was now suspect number one, and the authorities were actively searching for him. But when they went out to find him for questioning, he was nowhere to be found. Time would begin to elapse, and with nothing but testimony of hearsay, the case would begin to become stagnant. November of 2020 would come to a close, and then Christmas Day of 2020 rolls around. I imagine that the family only wanted one thing: justice for Ebony Pack. That wish would seem to fall on deaf ears that year, because the year would come to a close, and by January of 2021, they were still in the same place, searching for Chong, and no one was in custody. They would even announce a reward, a $10,000 reward for any information that leads to the capture of the culprit. But although no one was in custody, they were hot on the lead. During the investigation, they were prying over hours and hours of surveillance tape. On these tapes, they would see the car of Ebony Pack, but they would also spot that dark-colored Cadillac following her from an interstate to the neighborhood that she was found in. They found out that the tag that was located on the dark-colored Cadillac was a fake, but they did find one clue. There was a dealership tag located on the vehicle, so they called this dealership, and they would in fact confirm that they recently sold a dark-colored Cadillac to a guy who goes by the name of Ricky Vance. Ricky would be located and hauled down to headquarters for further questioning, but upon questioning, he would deny everything. But although he was uncooperative, they did have one ace in the hole. They had secured a search warrant for his vehicle. When the search concluded, they had located gunshot residue on the passenger side of the vehicle. However, there was none found on the driver's seat, which can only mean one thing. If Ricky Vance is in fact responsible, then two people were in the vehicle on that night. One other thing, Ricky Vance was a guy with a questionable past. In fact, he had just been paroled from doing 20 years. The authorities were now all gas and no brakes. They were determined to search further. During this investigation, they would come to find how he got that fake tag on his Cadillac. Turns out, he got help from a guy who goes by the name of Terrence Marche. Helping someone obtain a fake tag is a misdemeanor, no big deal. But there was one problem. They had also pulled both of their cell phone records, and GPS would indicate that on the night of Ebony Pack's demise, they could place Ricky Vance and Terrence Marche at the same spot, just miles away from where the incident occurred. The authorities felt like they had enough circumstantial evidence anyways. So on April 22nd of 2021, Ricky Vance would be arrested and placed in custody.
I wasn't driving.
Well, then who had your car?
Yes, I didn't do it. I didn't do it.
Rocky Vance says the car used in the shooting to kill 30-year-old Ebony Pack may look like his, but he insists that police have the wrong guy.
There's not evidence saying it's my car. It's speculated.
So you didn't know her? You don't know her boyfriend? You know nothing about it?
I don't know nothing. I don't know none of it. I don't know none of it. I swear to God, I don't know none of it.
They would also issue an arrest warrant for Terrence Marche, but he was nowhere to be found. Shortly after Ricky Vance is arrested, they issue one more warrant, one for Chong Ling Dan. When the arrest warrant was initially issued, Chong Dan was in the Honduras, but he contacted the authorities himself. He turned himself in. He let them know that he was boarding a flight and on his way back to the States. He would then be arrested at the airport.
Now the third suspect to face charges in the murder of a Bucks County woman in Lansdale last year. According to the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office, police have already charged Ricky Vance and are still searching for Terrence March.
A short period would pass, and the trial phase would begin. Both Ricky Vance and Chong Dan had pled not guilty to the charges. Their life would now be in the hands of a jury, pending the outcome. The prosecution would waste no time. They would stand up and paint a vivid picture. Prosecutors would point to the cell phone records and the turnpike records. The photos would show Ebony Pack being followed from a Pennsylvania Turnpike to the Fort Washington exit. At approximately 9:56 p.m., Ebony Pack would stop at a red light, and shortly afterwards, a dark-colored Cadillac would pull alongside the driver's side, and they would begin firing. During this incident, Ebony Pack would be hit 13 times, which leads us to the motive. Authorities believe that Ricky Vance and Terrence Marche were hired by Chong Dan. It turns out that when Chong Dan and Jasmine Stokes broke up, Jasmine took $19,000 from him. Jasmine would eventually pay back $10K, but she still owed Chong $9,000. They believed that the $9,000 that Jasmine owed was enough motive for him to hire Ricky Vance and Terrence Marche to harm Ebony Pack, which means Ebony was completely innocent. She was a victim of circumstances that were out of her control. But little did she know, someone had been watching. Someone was waiting, and for a moment, things were normal.
That's up. Do that. Go do it.
The cool breeze of the autumn night seemed to be soothing, but without warning, that stillness would be shattered. In November of 2022, both Ricky Vance and Chong Dan would be found guilty of murder. For their role in this incident, they would both receive a life sentence. But although they're behind bars, one person is still at large. Terrence Marche, who is believed to be the person who actually fired the weapon on that evening. When the authorities were searching for Terrence, they interviewed his fiancée, and she told them that he had left the country. It turns out he was also in the Honduras, along with John Dan. She said that they would speak daily, but then out of nowhere, Terrence stopped calling, and soon afterwards, Chong Dan returned to the States to face charges, which leaves only two scenarios. One, Terrence Marche is still in the Honduras, evading capture. Or the second scenario, that Chong Dan lured Terrence to the Honduras to cut off the loose ends. It's a very strong possibility that Terrence Marche is no longer here and that Chong Dan is responsible. Remember, Chong Dan turned himself in. But why was he so confident to come to the States and face the charges? It becomes clear that Terrence Marche was the loose link. He's the only guy who could actively implement both Ricky Vance and Chong Dan in what happened to Ebony Pack. Terrence was the odd guy out in this situation. Chong Dan approached Ricky Vance, a guy who he had a standing relationship with, to get the job done. And then Ricky Vance incorporated Terrence Marche. But if he's no longer here, how can he roll over? What happened to 30-year-old Ebony Pack is completely tragic. She now leaves behind a daughter who was forced to grow up without a father, and now without a mother. On the night that Ebony Pack left her home to go visit her girlfriend in Lansdale, she had planned for her daughter to be in the vehicle on that evening, but at the last minute, she changed her mind, and that last minute change might have spared her daughter. Rest in peace, Ebony Pack. Thank you for being a light for others.
Like a blade of